Welcome back. We're talking about China's growing role on the world stage. Let's get back to our panel right now. And Keo-jin, not so long ago, there was the China-Africa Forum. And at that forum, there were some concerns expressed by African countries about the impact of development in their countries on their environment, on sustainable development. What were the main concerns in these countries, and how is China addressing them?
Well, to be very frank, I think this is a very serious concern and it has to be taken into account and greater consideration by China. And I think that the most important thing is to raise the awareness of Chinese companies and Chinese enterprises and public domain when they go into Africa to invest or cooperate with them on the business level, which in principle is a good thing. No one signs up to a business deal without mutual desires. So, but I think the problem was that the lack of understanding of the culture, the tradition, sometimes a little bit lack of respect was one of the main issues. And the West has this kind of a somewhat privileged position, being in a privileged position of having been there a long time ago and therefore understanding the local customs. Now, the Chinese are all about efficiency, so they might do things very quickly, try to reduce the cost and somewhat haphazardly, but I think it is a matter of awareness. I think this is part of the whole progress and development that China is making currently to reach a certain kind of international standard, both on the environmental side, but also on the soft power in terms of respecting local customs.
Ambassador Naqvi, I want to turn now to an issue that you will be very familiar with, and that is nuclear security. It's an issue that preoccupies the whole world. At the Nuclear Security Summit, President Xi Jinping proposed, quote, a rational, coordinated and balanced nuclear security concept. What is that concept, and how do you evaluate China's role in promoting it?
Well, China has its own outlook on nuclear security as well as nuclear development. China itself has been setting up power plants for peaceful uses of nuclear energy. This initiative they share with Pakistan. They've helped us set up a few nuclear power plants. And the security aspect is fully taken care of by multi-layered security provisions, which are the post-Japanese nuclear accident, and they are now in the works in all the Chinese reactors. Plus, China believes in access to nuclear material and technology to non-NPT states. If it is allowed to one, it should be allowed to others. However, China feels that the non-NPT states should also sign the NPT. So Chinese position is quite clear, well articulated, unlike the position taken by the United States, which has eroded the NPT by signing the Indo-US nuclear deal in 2008. And as a result, India, a non-NPT state, has become a partner of the United States in nuclear cooperation and technology, and has been given a waiver of the nuclear suppliers group to have all the benefits of membership, even though it has not been admitted to the NSG. So, we are very satisfied with the Chinese position, and China takes a balanced, non-discriminatory and fair position on nuclear matters, while the United States does not.
Pepe, I want to stay with the nuclear issue and look at the situation in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. China, of course, is playing a key role there in trying to get a nuclear-free Korean Peninsula, but it's using a different tactic from other countries. China says it's got to be a multi-track, a multi-pronged strategy, not just sanctions, dialogue and sanctions. How's that working?
Absolutely. It's very complex to deal with the North Korean regime. I was there a few years ago, And I listened. While I was there, I basically listened to all their positions, including the nuclear issue. They always say that, first of all, the Korean War has to be technically finished, which is not. There was an armistice, but in the minds of the North Koreans, the war never ended. And there's got to be a direct negotiation with the Americans, possibly with the Chinese as mediators. So we should have a table, in fact, with North Korea, South Korea, China, and the United States to regulate a nuclear-free Korean Peninsula. Until we get there, this could take another 50 years, in fact. It's as indigestible as it can get in terms of geopolitics. But as the situation stands, and considering that the North Korean government has more or less a free rein to develop their nuclear weapons and their nuclear tests, and Chinese pressure, of course there is Chinese pressure, but it's not pressure enough to make them give up on their nuclear program. In terms of a North Korean-American administration dialogue, I don't see it coming. If we have Hillary as president, forget about it. If by any chance we have a Trump presidency, and considering that by his own admission he likes to strike deals, we could even foresee the possibility of having the US, both Koreas and China on the same table to discuss the nuclear issue in the Korean Peninsula. But in the long run, don't forget that from the point of view of the Pentagon, right, North Korea is number 4 in terms of existential threats to the US. So we would have to change the Pentagon's mentality to start with, which is not exactly easy, is it?
Okay, Ambassador Naqvi, you wanted to say?
I am saying that the North Korean problem has been allowed to fester for a long time. Because when the six-party talks began, it went along for some time quite well, but then the United States imposed sanctions on North Korea for some wrongdoings in Macau and some ruling of the Treasury Department. So, you don't mess around with multilateral talks. They could have done something else later on. But the North Koreans then just went overboard, and they pose a big threat now. And they are not even even listening to the Chinese, perhaps. So what do you do now? The point is that there has to be direct negotiations, and I agree with my previous colleague who was saying that the talks could be China, US, North Korea, with North Korea initially and maybe bringing in South Korea. But 6 parties are not working anymore.
Cajun, if we look at China's role in the world, its strategy, or its broad philosophy, if you like, its multilateral efforts are focused on growth and stability. It's not focused on any kind of military alliance. It's not focused on creating military alliances like NATO. How effective is that strategy that China has undertaken?
Well, I think it's effective to a certain extent. I would say that it's more the core, because China's approach, its own approach, which was to develop its economy, putting aside the military, dimension for now, has led to a greater influence in the world, right? I mean, thinking about all the discussion that we've had about China's multilateral strategy, about the AIIB, the One Belt, One Road, where does the money come from? Where does it actually come from? It comes from savings. Now, who are saving? It's the Chinese people. So I find it somewhat interesting that at some point, people are blaming China for too much saving and creating these global imbalances. But in fact, all this is what can be funding infrastructure around the world. So we got to keep in mind that its economic strategy is what is leading to its greater political role as well. I think that China's general philosophy so far is to be more on the defensive side, militarily speaking, than really having any kind of aggressive or belligerent kind of ambitions. I think this is where the West misinterprets it. And by virtue of focusing on the economic aspect, which is really beneficial for everyone, I think that it is taking the right approach.